Where do I go when there's no one to turn to? I feel alone, wondering why I am.
There were many women in the community who thought I had been appointed to advise them. They thought that was what the job was, right? So they used to ring me up. We got 6 phone calls a day on an average from women asking for help of various kinds. And if you looked at what they wanted to know, always they wanted to know information.
Where do I go when I meet familiar? Woman, hold my hand.
The very notion of an information service is now almost commonplace, whereas 25 years ago it was extraordinary.
And one of them said something like, so how long do you think the place will be here for? And I said, absolutely at most a decade. We'll have solved all the problems. You know, like I was 24 at the time. Only a 24-year-old could come up with an answer like that. No, sweat, we had it sorted.
Woman, hold my hand.
And so we appointed an information officer after a year. And Andy Sebastian got that job, and she was the first coordinator of the Women's Switchboard, and really the Women's Switchboard was her creation. She and another woman on staff, Maureen Fallon, worked together to get the original grant. Maureen was committed to information because she was a librarian. I mean, is a librarian, even though she doesn't practice that now. She now works for free Tibet. And, well, such interesting lives. And she became deputy librarian at the State Library, and she and Andy worked together because Maureen had seen information services in the UK and knew that, well, believed that the provision of information was what a library was about rather than holding books. So the two of them worked together and they did a fantastic job, and they brought in so many women like Eve Reppin and, goodness, I don't remember her name, a woman from SACOS, Margaret Wagstaff. Those two selected the staff and trained them, and they did a fantastic job. And then Andy was the first coordinator, and really the concept of the switchboard came from Andy.
Women in South Australia were not getting access to the kinds of knowledge that they needed. And so the provision of information in ways that they could process and act on, which meant with some support and encouragement to do so, and in very user-friendly ways, was really important. But then my notion was, okay, if I thought volunteers were fantastic and could achieve anything, that could potentially provide the diversity of women that we needed involved in the place. What were the deficits? Well, they didn't get enough recognition, they didn't get enough rewards, I thought I could set up a switchboard in such a way that it provided high quality training for the volunteers, and excellent work placement, because a lot of volunteers then, and I think now, are people who've been out of the workplace for a while and find it sometimes quite difficult to get back into the workplace. So we set it up on that basis. And the very first time I went to talk with a group of women specifically about being volunteers and how I thought the scheme could work and what I thought the mutual kind of recognition deal could be and how it could work so that it was really good for volunteers and that it wasn't just about them providing free labour. I think it was Croydon TAFE Women's Studies, something like that. And there was this absolutely fantastic woman in the group. Her name was Pat Rowe. She was by far the oldest woman in that group, and indeed for a long time she swanned around the switchboard saying, I'm the oldest volunteer the switchboard has. I can't remember how old she was, maybe she was late 50s or had just turned 60 about the time she came. She's dead now, but her response to what I had said was just amazing. She just said, that is the most fantastic and exciting thing I've ever heard of. And you know, for me, it was kind of like, oh, I hope they really like this idea. Oh God, you're not going to get shot, blah, blah, blah. It was just like this absolute total go-ahead. And I think that Pat gave me absolutely the confidence then to never look back. And Yeah. It's interesting, the longevity of the switchboard now is what is it, 20 years?
23 years.
23 years gone. So the longevity of the switchboard now is such that whenever we think backwards, what we are now struck with is what just happened to me is memory of people who aren't here anymore. And there's been a number of women who are no longer with us, all of whom have made a striking contribution. And it's really hard to ever pick out one person. And in her own way, Pat would be furious with me for doing so on precisely those grounds. However, I think that recognising the role she played right at that moment, right at the beginning, is, I hope, some small salutation to all the volunteers who have worked here.
I was one of the first volunteers when the centre opened. I thought it was just great, you know, that we had another centre for women. But of course, before then, I was in Women's Liberation, and we did have an information service. In fact, you probably know, as I keep telling people, that, you know, your first fund of information came from Women's Liberation.
79 I started in WIS, and I went until 92, 13 years.
Wow. And I started in the same year, 1979, but 6 months after Mer.
Right.
So, and then I went to 96, so it's 17 years I was there. It became part of my life.
I was working part-time when I started at Switchboard. I'd done women's studies, and Switchboard was a natural procession from women's studies. I only left Switchboard because I got a second part-time job and just didn't have the time to continue.
Well, it was pretty ad hoc. We had to apply, and I was interviewed by Carmel and Liz Ahern, and it was about a 10-minute sort of formal interview, and then it degenerated into chat about all sorts of things, and they obviously decided I was okay, and I passed the test.
And they're still friends of ours today, aren't they?
Yes,
yeah, so it's great. Yes, it's amazing. Well, 20 years ago, it's a long time ago. I can't remember being interviewed at all, but I do remember that I had to do some training, and it was pretty minimal compared with what I've just done. I really felt like I was trained this time round. I think it was a day, and we did a little bit about communication skills, and we talked about who we were in a large group and what we wanted out of it and things like that, but I can't remember a great deal about it. It might have been a weekend, but it certainly wasn't a long period of time. And that was the training then.
Gudrun introduced me to the volunteer coordinator, Maria, and I duly went through the process of filling out an application form, being accepted for an interview, which led to some very extensive training over 3 days from 9 until 5. And I was really impressed with that training, and impressed with the fact that Rita Pemberton, she conducted the training, and I discovered she was a volunteer. And I felt, wow, this service enables volunteers to use their skills in very positive ways. And I started to warm to it, believing this is the right place. I don't have a great deal of knowledge, but I'm sure I will learn. It was during the training that I probably got my biggest scare. We were taken out into the phone room, and we were told, here's where the database is on a computer. And I thought, no way, I have never used a computer. I will lose all their information. But I was readily assured that couldn't happen, that nothing I could do would lose that information. And so at the end of the 3-day training course, if we were offered a shift, we knew we'd made it. And so I elected to work on a Friday morning, and I began work with 2 other volunteers, Marion and Glenda. I'm not sure how many years Marion had been there, but Glenda had certainly been there for quite a long time. And I suddenly felt very comfortable with 2 other volunteers with a lot of experience, and I was also finding out the tremendous support that was offered by the staff, and in particular we had a supervisor on every shift. That backup, that support was always there.
I had an interview. I think I filled out a form. I don't think it was much more formal than that from memory. Afterwards there were training sessions, workshops, quite a lot of it, and role playing in some of those, about incidents that might have happened, and we could take it on. I retired from my job as Deputy Librarian of the University of South Australia in 1997, and I was really nervous about retirement. I'd worked since I was 18, and I thought, oh my golly, what will I do with myself having all this spare time? So as they advise you, I thought I'd better organise something before I left work. And strangely enough, I didn't know much about the Women's Information Service. I used to work in Kintore Avenue, and I used to see the sign as I walked down to the Adelaide Teachers College in Kintore Avenue, and that is the only experience I had of it. But it just seemed to me, Women's Information Switchboard, as it was most of those years, that sounds like a useful sort of activity. And so I rang the service and said, I'd be interested in volunteering, and I was really, really lucky because I retired in February, went to Sydney for a week, and then the week after I came back there was a training session starting, and I had been interviewed and accepted for that, and so I was able to start training straight away.
And doing a library course was really relevant when I came to get involved with Switchboard, because I discovered that there was no system in how we organised our information. You may have heard of the infamous pink cards that were on a sort of Rolodex, and people would write out the name of an organisation and they'd put it on whatever heading took them at the time. So sometimes someone might put down National Council of Women and put the address and phone number. Someone else might put Women, National Council of. And so this Rolodex was an absolute mishmash. It had all sorts of subjects in, and it had subjects like women, which is about 90% of the database. And I was saying things like, well, my library training says that this is not how we should be doing this. We should find some better way of organising our information. And a group of people who worked at the State Library, another person who'd done the library course with me, Sabina Flanagan, and I used to meet in one little room, and our job was to try and sort out and rationalise and make more reasonable the famous pink cards. And we found a system of organising information that we discovered by talking to KISA, as it was in those days, and it's the same system that InfoSearch is now still based on.
We always walk in, and sometimes we walked out too. I can remember going to women's houses. I mean, it just seems silly now, we wouldn't do it. And I'd never let staff do what we did in those days. We were so gung-ho, and we had no care for our safety. And certainly occupational health and safety we'd never heard of. We didn't even know it existed. And we all took risks in those days that I would never let our staff take now. Going into houses we didn't know, taking children from schools, and when the parents had taken them away. We used to accompany women to court, but we spent a lot of time talking, and we spent a lot of time making sure that Switchboard was a safe place where women could cry, because if a woman cried in public in those days, she was considered mad. So if she went to the family court and heard a whole affidavit saying what an evil, bad woman she was and a bad mother, we'd go and hold her hand so that she didn't actually say, "Excuse me, that's not right." But when she came back to Switchboard, she could just scream, cry, shout, whatever she needed to do to get rid of some of the emotions.
Well, one thing, it was open at weekends and evenings, which, although it was only limited clientele, it meant there was something in Adelaide that people could get to. And I think it was very valuable on the, while it was. I can see why it isn't because of financial restrictions. It did have a downturn at one point, but I think now it's really is doing pretty well. I mean, I wouldn't say it was as good as when we were there, but not bad. It was probably as good as it probably is, but we've got prejudices.
Well, I can remember at one session I'd had a fairly heavy call with a would-be suicide, intending suicide. And the next moment, the next call I took was a woman from the country who wanted to know, no, I'm sorry, the next call I took wasn't the woman from the country. It was actually somebody who wanted to know how to cook snails. And I just about went into paroxysms because it seemed I was still a little stressed out from the previous call. But anyway, we found out how to cook snails and she learned how to cook her snails.
Both the Working Women's Centre and the Women's Information Service began at fairly similar times, and I think they're both underpinned by that principle that women should be empowered to move their own issues along. So both organisations work from that principle of giving women choices, giving women information so that they can then do whatever it is they need to do next. And that to me is feminism at work.
Out of the review came another great change, that we decided that switchboard just did not fit in the 90s or to take us into the next century. And so we were looking for a name change. WIS had become a very affectionate nickname, and we didn't want to lose WIS. And so it was decided that we would be Women's Information Service.
So I thought, right, I'm here for a short period of time, what's the best contribution that I could make? And I thought my contribution really was to get people passionate again, working together and really wanting to be at work and wanting to participate. And I think that's what I tried to do in the time that I was there. One of the most important tools I used was having a drink after work. And that had the effect of having people staying and talking to each other outside of work and getting to make connections with each other again. As well, I think we set up a whole lot of work teams so that the different people would work on some issues of trying to refresh and revitalise. We had a team who was working on looking at what kind of information were we keeping, was it the most up to date, what systems did we have in place. We had another team that was looking at how do we spread the message, how do we go out, what do we talk about, and also we tried to, I think, we tried to get some more training programs going, trying to recruit more volunteers.
When I first started volunteering at WIS, I automatically felt really comfortable with the women I was working with. I think because the environment is one where you feel really safe to discuss how you're feeling, where you're at with things, and you can put forward new ideas. And so from the start, I realised that the relationships I was forming with the women that I was working with on a volunteer basis were like none that I'd experienced before.
WIS is absolutely unique because the fabric, the tapestry that is WIS, is the diversity of women, their cultural and linguistic diversity, the ages of the women that come in and touch WIS. I've worked with women in their late teens, I've worked with women in their late 70s and everything in between. The women who come in are mothers, their grandmothers, their sisters, their lawyers, their doctors, their information officers, their street cleaners, but what they all are is compassionate, committed, experienced, wise women. So that's what's unique, and it's all of that combined from all of us that touches women and helps their lives maybe turn for the better, we hope.
And it's not just an information service, it's a service which enables women to feel they have a right to make up their own minds. So information is power, but information needs to be presented in a way that women can hear. the way that women can accept it. And I've never yet met a woman in all the years I worked anywhere who didn't know what she really wanted to do, given the right amount of information. So it's not just an information service, and while some people can get information off the net, off friends, and that's really the way we always get our information, is from friends, but WIS has turned out to be a service that is a friend to women, so that they actually trust us not to judge, and not to say if I was you I'd, which friends often do, but actually to enable them, empower them to make their own choices, and they know what they want in their hearts.
We were given the courage of our convictions. We came into Switchboard as being nothing special, but after we'd been there for a while, we realised we were great women. Yes. And we still are, aren't we, Rita?
And it was very much a family switchboard, and everyone was interested in everybody else. One time when I came back, they'd turned over from everything pen and pencil to computers, which I liked. But I did find that because I'm a bit dyslexic and can't spell, I had to, when I needed to look up something and I couldn't spell whatever it was, I had to think of something I could spell that would get me through and around in a circle. I sort of went round at it, but it worked.
Every Women's Survival Guide grew out of that Women's Services meeting, and all these women's services used to meet on a regular basis. And we once we made our decision of what we needed to do was produce some sort of a book. So, and we did it. I don't quite know how, but we managed to pull it off, have it all ready, and the reception was very popular. We distributed it through supermarkets, so we sent every supermarket in South Australia a bundle of these for them to put on the checkout counters, because we had the money to print them for free, and we wanted to make sure the people who got them were the people who needed them, and we didn't want price to be a barrier.
It has been part of the enormous change that's happened all over the world, especially in English-speaking and industrialised countries, for the last 30 years. That is the full participation, which is not yet achieved, but it is being achieved, the full participation of women in public life. And I'm sure the switchboard helps that. I know so many people who have come to notions of feminism through the switchboard, who have managed to keep their houses because of the switchboard, who have found appropriate medical treatment because of the switchboard, you know, who have in so many ways been helped.
It was that I had a phone call which had 3 different questions that she wanted answered, and on the whole they looked very superficial, but they were reasonably hard to research. Anyway, I did it. I think some of the people thought, you know, this is stupid to be doing this, but I called her back and I suddenly realised that she was isolated, and actually those 3 questions were probably just an excuse for getting to talk to somebody else on the other end of the phone, and so I thought it was very valuable.
Many memorable moments, but one particular one, it was about working as a team, and this was when we were at Kintore Avenue, and it was a particular case of domestic violence which was very upsetting. The woman was in a public phone, so it was practically a full-wide liaison, you know. The woman was in a public phone, somebody was dealing with her at WIS, I was dealing with the shelter, so it was a sort of a, you know, 4 people liaising for that, and the shelter was liaising with the police so they could pick her up. But it was such a coordinated job that is stuck in my mind, and we did it. We picked up this woman from the public phone right on the spot with 3 children and a couple of bags, and I felt so good about that she was under protection and a shelter, you know, with support.
I said to you that I remembered my first phone call, and although I was nervous, I was challenged. I am still challenged today whenever I pick up the phone. It's something you can't prepare for. You don't know what the phone call's going to be about. It could be anger, it could be grief, it could be sadness, but you meet the challenge. And if at the end of that call a woman says, I feel stronger now, or I feel better, you put the phone down, you know why you're here. And so long as I have the skills and the energy to meet that challenge, I hope I'll be here for some time to come.
Some of the memorable moments are people just dropping in for coffee and sort of some difficult women who sort of called in regularly because there was a place for them to go to and women would listen to them. The other one is something that's very close to me. I'm in a housing co-op and we had a big, I don't know whether it was a phone-in, I think it must have been a phone-in, all about housing. And Terry Hemmings was Minister for Housing at the time, and he launched this phone-in at Women's Information Service. And there was a whole lot of information was given to women phoning in about housing.
Information is power, and knowledge is power. And this is that we inform you everything that we know about it, and we also inform you about the consequences of that, but the decision is yours. So you can, but you know all of that. So we don't impose, we just inform it. And so the person can make an informed decision, knowing, the information and the consequence.
Umba ue a, umba ue a, umba ue a a. Umba e o e, umba e o e, umba e o e a.
I think the switchboard continues to be fantastic. It really does continue to be a place where women feel safe, that is their own territory. For a long time we used to say that. Why a women's information service, people used to say to us from about the mid-80s. Well, because it's safe territory. You can walk in the door and you can know that you're not going to be judged or dismissed or seen as less important than other clients because of your gender. And that continues to be true, and that continues to be almost, as it were, an island in the city. So we need some more of those islands.
We're gonna keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. Umba ue a, umba ue a. We'll move along together, growing strong together, learn to live together, never turning back, never turning back. Umba ue a, umba ue a.
And we were given a grant to train women on the internet. That was probably another bit of a panic time for me because I thought, no way, I can't handle this. But that is one of the wonderful strengths of WIS. It is the way that the staff support the staff, whether it be paid or unpaid, and you're encouraged and you're strengthened and you do things that you didn't believe you were capable. And I found myself surfing the net in my own simple way. And now one of the absolute joys is training other women on the net and experiencing their joy when they're able to get around it, but in particular when they send or receive their first email.
The provision of the WIS service, the internet service, has been just a wonderful thing, wonderful for the women who come in and have the opportunity to know what the internet's about, and wonderful for the many, many people, including so many students and backpackers and people from other countries who come and use the internet for their scheduled half hour. Yeah. And also the opportunity for people to come in and take pamphlets off the shelves, and such a wide range of pamphlets on display. It's really been wonderful.
It's really women becoming familiar with the centre, and I think that's the biggest problem, because many people, women, still don't know anything about the Women's Information Service. And I keep telling them, you know, the women are constantly being told they need to get up to the technological age, and I keep telling them, go to the Women's Information Service.
It's like, to me, it was like a coming of age as a feminist in some ways too, because I didn't study feminism. I still haven't studied feminism. I think it was just something that was in me, and through working at WIS I can see why it's important, why we have to have this sort of history, why we have to know what's happened in women's lives. And it's about that collective wisdom, the collective compassion of the women who've worked at WIS, their experiences of life, and when WIS does touch a woman's life, that hopefully we touch it and make a very positive difference in it.
But the most I got out of it, of being at Switchboard, was a woman named Chris who said she was doing women's studies at TAFE. So I took that on, got a certificate and was recommended to go to university, and did, and finished up getting a degree. So that was quite, amazing for me to be able to do that. So it's that opportunity to do other things from that.
I came in there just... we were told, don't say you're ordinary. I came in there, I was told by my son's girlfriend, they're needing older women in this organisation. Why don't you go in? And I was interviewed by wonderful Ros Johnson, you know, and she just made me feel at ease. And she said, whatever you can give, you're happy to do. I think I got more. I learned so much about life through women. I learned got shocked at times, you know, with the changing things. But to me, it made me realize what it was to be a woman, you know, and to help other women. Not that we don't help men. I mean, we got questions like, why don't you answer men? And, you know, quite often I said, well, if they rang in, they'll be treated just the same. And then we had the season of only lesbians work there.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I happen to be 50 years old, I'm a grandmother, and this, that, and the other. But all those things came to the fore. I learnt more from you wonderful young women than I think you learned from me.
That's right.
It was great fun.
Yeah.
It was great fun.
And talking about Ros Johnson,
it was wonderful.
I came in as a pretty uptight person, not very much confidence, very shy, and it was a tremendous experience, and I found I was a bit not with it. One day Ros Johnson came up to me, and she was a big woman, as you remember, and she put her arms around me and she gave me the biggest hug that I could have, you know, I've just about lost my breath. And for a minute I thought, oh God, you know. And then I thought, hey, this is not bad. And that changed me. And I've been a hugger ever since, you know, and I felt so relaxed and part of Switchboard from then on that it was a joy to go in there.
In my case, because I was doing a psychology degree, and the reason I finished it was Switchboard as it was in those days, was because I got myself a job. But the knowledge I'd gained about community services and everything at WIS was very useful when I was out there working with people with mental health problems that needed access to those community services. I think most of your newly graduated sites would have had a very steep learning curve, having to find out about all that sort of stuff, but I sort of already had that under my belt, so that was really good. And just gave me more confidence, because I'd been, you know, relatively closed off before that, and I was working with a group of very different sort of women that I wouldn't have met normally throughout my life, and so it just expanded my whole awareness of how things work, if you like, and how people are.
Oh yes, for me, I think in terms of, it was great to be able to go in and get into the political talk and learn more about it and hear what's going on, and to meet like-minded and like-thinking people, which was great.
The opportunities and the experiences that I've had with the amazing women who are the Women's Information Service. If I look back, say when I was 15 years old, and not only would I be thinking, wow, you know, in my early 20s I'll be living in Adelaide, but that I'll actually be doing stuff that's just so worthwhile. I hadn't looked that far ahead, and I certainly, when I was 15, didn't realise that I'd end up working with women about women's issues and in a feminist environment. It wasn't even something that was really that much on my mind until I went to uni and I did women's studies, and then from there I kind of dropped my interest in agriculture and things like that, and moved more into women's issues, and now I work full-time with the Women's Information Service, and I look to how I got here, and it is because of the volunteering opportunities that presented themselves and the support and the welcoming environment that WIS creates, I guess, and embraces women coming in, and the collective experiences and the shared knowledge, and yeah, it's just something that I'm very passionate about.
I'm still growing and still learning from it, and I've discovered so much what is out there for women which I had no idea about. And now I can go out there and say to my friends, hey, you know, come here, whatever you really want to know about, they'll have it. So, and there's still so much for me here to learn and discover, and it seems to grow week by week.
I think I became imbued with the same passion and vision, I think, that other people had. One of the things I remember very much was thinking when I was due to leave there, just now how much I'd been part of a very long movement which involved many hundreds of women. Each of us had made our ways there differently. We had very different roads about why we came to be there, but I think we all ended up loving the place, absolutely determined that it still had relevance, that women's information was really, really important, that there was a need for the service, and that we really had a responsibility to make sure that we were still meeting the needs of women into the future. And I think that, you know, all of us who've worked there and who've left there have stayed with that same commitment, and I certainly feel that now.
I'm always conscious when I work in a position of especially the women who've gone before, and it felt like working here that there was a really long and solid tradition of women working well together, and that meant a hell of a lot. And I think the things I learnt in my time was just observing how women who are committed to a common purpose can keep that focus and have difference and have diversity in the workplace, but move forward as well. The issues for women haven't changed that much in the time that it's been operating. Our lives are different, we've got different pressures and so on, but fundamentally, while ever there's I suppose discrimination and gender politics are operating, those issues won't go away overnight. Maybe the way that we communicate and get information will change again. It's quite likely that it will. But I see that as just opening up more options for women.
Oh, we always had a party for something. The parties were a great way of keeping in touch and just seeing other women who you'd perhaps worked with on other shifts, and they'd change days and you'd change days, and yeah, it was good.
I'd just like to say that I just want the goddess to keep smiling on WIS, because I think it's the most wonderful, empowering, amazing place which has seen so many women go through. I would hate to see the volunteer program stopped, and I would hate to think that any government would try and say volunteerism of this sort is wrong. I want WIS to keep on providing for volunteers in a way that is empowering. I loved the way that the volunteers, when things weren't going right here, took it upon themselves to go and see the Premier and say, things are not right, fix it. So I think that they are empowered volunteers who are treated with respect. I also want to I'd love to make sure that the staff are recognised for the great, courageous, incredible job that they do.
There's so many women who've really supported WIS and have kept it going. Like, I think we've had a 23-year history so far, and I think that every woman, from members of parliament to women's advisors to directors of offices of status of women to information officers to volunteers, everyone, like, just thank you, and let's just keep working together to make sure that the service keeps changing, stays dynamic, stays vibrant, and just stays.
Woman, woman, whoa, 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 woman, 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 whoa.